So many stories about nurses this morning, and appropriate given that today is the International Day of Nurses, and at a time in global history when nurses have never been more in the spotlight, perhaps never more appreciated. But why does it take a crisis to put that spotlight on nurses? That's a question that Professor Kath Rogers is asking, Dean of Health at Torrens University Australia, a former clinical nurse. Morning, Kath.
Good morning.
Could you hear all of those stories? I got you on a different line.
No, I heard all of those stories, and they were all unique, and yet they just shared that same resonance, didn't they, about how nurses make a difference and are remembered for the rest of people's lives.
It's so true. Like I said earlier, I can still recall the really soft sort of Irish lilt of a nurse when I had my first son. Just there walking me through, or this voice in my ear. It's so calming. Do you think we value nurses enough? And I mean, at the moment, there are people standing outside applauding in other countries, and we're paying tribute. Celebrities are recognising them. But in terms of work conditions, pay packets, and respect generally, do we value nurses?
I think the answer is yes and no. Yes, we do. We certainly trust nurses. I think the communities around the world trust nurses, are really grateful for the care that nurses provided, as your callers have just been outlining. So that's all true. But perhaps there isn't sufficient recognition of the professionalism of nursing, of the demands of nursing. So we hear a lot of narrative around nurses' care, and absolutely they do, but probably less about how much knowledge and skill and education sit behind that caring and compassion.
Is there a factor here of gender too? I mean, what is the gender split in terms of nurses? Because we know it's female dominated. By how much?
Remarkably female dominated, and that has changed very little over time. Currently, over 90% of nurses are women still. And, there have been a lot of campaigns at the state level, national level, international level to try to encourage more men into nursing because, anything that encourages more people to want to be a nurse is a good thing, right? But they've been spectacularly unsuccessful. And I think that's because we continue to live in a gendered society. Nursing is seen as women's work, and men struggle to think of themselves as performing a caring role. And I think, unfortunately, in every society, women's work is still seen as kind of less important than men's work.
All right, I want to talk to you about practical ways we address that, because for you now in an education capacity as Dean of Health at Torrens University Australia, no doubt that'll be something that you guys are considering. Kath, what's your own nursing story? How did you get into the profession?
Okay, I have a story very much like your callers. When I was 15, my dad was really sick and he died not long after. And Mum was looking after him at home, and it was awful. She was really struggling. And we had domiciliary nurses who came in and looked after Dad each day, and perhaps more particularly also looked after Mum and kept an eye on we kids as well. And they just seemed to manage to walk in the door and know what was going on and be able to just give you a bit of a look or a hug or a comment, and it made things better. Not completely better, of course, but it helped. And I think I was inspired so much by that I started nursing when I was 17. And so there you go, a personal start for me as well.
Yeah, and I'm recalling too, we did a broadcast from Moreton Bay earlier this year, and there was a young student there. She was going to be the first intake at the new university up there. Her own situation, I think it was that her mother had cancer, and she had seen nurses in the same way that you did, Kath, come in and provide that care and that professionalism. So those sorts of stories continue today. In terms,
they do, and I hear many of my students saying similar things. They have personal reasons for joining nursing, but whatever your personal reason, I think the truth is that when you do join nursing, you very quickly understand what a demanding and challenging profession it is, and just how much skill and knowledge and experience you need to be good at it.
Yep. And nice as a round of applause and acknowledgement is from the world right now, in terms of nurses' pay,
Yeah.
What has that done over time? And what does a nurse earn in 2020?
So a beginning nurse. I mean, it's variable depending on that nurse's level of appointment, their skill, their background. But a beginning nurse is going to earn around $65,000. And moving upwards from there. So actually, nurses' pay has improved a lot. I can tell you a lot since when I first began as a nurse, and so that's been a positive thing. That's I think been part of an awareness of the contribution that nurses bring. But things that haven't changed so much has been other recognition within the workplace, sorting out the kind of workload, nurses' workload. Nurses tend to be responsible for everything that goes on in a unit. That they're not just providing nursing care, but they're also just the manager of the entire space, and there's a lot of invisible workload. And so many young nurses, and this is the sad part, so many young nurses leave nursing because they can't practice in the way that they want to or that they were trained to, because the demands of the job exceed their capacity to be able to care in the way that they want. And that is something that we've really got to address to ensure that we've got the nursing workforce we need moving forwards.
Yes, and of course the flip side of that, the patients of the future have the people there to care for them. In terms of intakes at university to study nursing, is there much demand?
There's a lot of demand, as a matter of fact, and that's a positive thing. But, we want to see even more demand, because the best place that we can be in is to have this range of high-quality applicants and making the right decisions of the students that we take into university. So, and nursing is a great profession for people, not just after they leave school, but also at different times in their lives. We see a lot of mature age students coming into nursing, and they bring this, their rich tapestry of life experiences with them. So we want a range of people coming into nursing, and we want to see the nursing workforce kind of mimic the societal population, if you will. So we want to see men and women in nursing. We want to see young nurses. We want to see older nurses. We want to see nurses from different cultural backgrounds, different sexual orientations. In other words, we want to make sure that nurses are representative of the community that they serve.
How do you attract more men into nursing, Kath?
I think that's been a challenge that I've grappled with and the whole profession has grappled with. At Torrens University, we're doing our best to present men as professional nurses working in a variety of contexts and putting out that message that it's okay to care. I'm hoping that as we see more gender equality happening, I think younger men are more prepared to think about their softer side and to acknowledge their softer side. I'm hoping that over time that'll lead more of those men to join us in nursing. But in the meantime, I think we've got to really profile the men in nursing, really profile the opportunities of nursing as a career, and move away, in a way, from this notion that nurses are angels and anything that kind of symbolises nurses as women, rather than nurses can be anyone who is skilled enough and competent enough and educated enough.
Kath, great to hear your story and get a sense of the profession in 2020. On this day, what is it? It's International Nurses Day, and it's the 200, where did I see there? What is it? The 200th anniversary of the birth of Florence Nightingale.
That's exactly right, and it's the International Year of the Nurse.
It's the year, the day, and the occasion. Wow.
Exactly. It's everything.
Timely.
So it's a pretty special time for us.
Well, thank you, Kath.
Thank you very much.
Professor Kath Rogers, Dean of Health at Torrens University.